Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob. This is Greene County Podcast. We have Megan Brown from Hope Found, Northeast Arkansas, with us tonight. Welcome.
Yes, welcome. Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. I'm going to give you a little bit of background information on this, and then I've got some questions, and we're going to let Megan tell us all about what they do.
Okay.
Believe it or not, the statistics say that there's about 1 million people living in some form of slavery in America today. Mm-hmm. And there's somewhere 40 to 50 million in the world. We've actually got one podcast that's coming up that'll go into a lot of detail on that. The statistics I saw is that out of every 1,000 people in America, 3.3 of those are in some form of slavery. And that doesn't sound like a lot I guess one is a lot, but that doesn't sound like a lot. But if you think Paragould has something like 30,000 people in it, that puts in Paragould, Arkansas, that puts supposedly about 100 people falling into that category. So this is a very real problem. This is a problem that is happening today, and it's a problem that not only affects the people in that while they're in that, but it affects everyone that is ever touched by that for the rest of their lives. So I do have one question to start with. Is Hope Found Northeast Arkansas the only Hope Found, or is there, so that's unique to this area?
Yes, sir. It is an organization that myself and 3 other local women started in 2018. So we basically, I don't know if y'all remember this, but in 2018, there were 3 news stories that hit the media about human trafficking. There was a restaurant owner in Jonesboro that had been arrested. For trafficking one of his employees. There was a young lady in a different county that had left with somebody that she met online, and he ended up trafficking her. And there was another young lady in another county in Northeast Arkansas, both in Northeast Arkansas, that also left with somebody that they had met online, and they also were trafficking her. Thank God both of them were recovered, but all 3 of those cases happened in 2018. And so that really kind of, spurred us women to just recognize, okay, there's really a need in our community for education and awareness on this topic, but to also have some kind of program that can serve the specific needs of those that have been through trafficking. And so that's kind of why we decided to start Hope Found. And yes, we're the only, Hope Found there is.
Well, that's kind of unique. Usually if it's of Northeast Arkansas or something, there's others where that came from. That's pretty cool. So what is it that you do?
So we provide, I'll say this. We fight human trafficking through prevention and restoration. So on the prevention side of things, we have a community educator who goes out into the community who, really will educate anybody that is willing to listen to us. But we also go into the schools. We train law enforcement, medical professionals, educators, social service providers. We go into churches. Anyone that wants to learn about human trafficking and what it could look like, with the people they work with and are in their community. We go out there and provide that training. We also have youth prevention curriculum where we've gone into residential facilities and we brought this curriculum into school, and we really want to educate the students on, how trafficking happens, how to recognize it so they can protect themselves, protect friends, just how to recognize, unhealthy behaviors and high-risk behaviors. And so we do a lot of that on the prevention side. And then on the restoration side is where we walk alongside people who have experienced trafficking. We advocate for them. We help them get connected to resources. We just really help them on their journey through healing. So however that may look, because it looks different for everybody, we're just able to really lean in and help support them.
Okay, so on the prevention side, I guess there's like 2 halves of that. You're explaining to people what to look for so they can avoid being, especially kids, avoid being
Right.
taken advantage of that way. And then also educating bystanders, if you will, of how to recognize that and be able to make the appropriate calls and
Right.
and keep people from. I know when I got my CDL renewed last time, you have to watch a video and actually take
Yep.
a test. And I mean, this is a nationwide effort to do this.
It is, and I've been really incredibly proud, of the transportation industry because, truck drivers, they're out there and they're going, to different truck stops and they're kind of on the front lines of seeing where some sex trafficking happens at. And so being trained to be able to recognize that now is very proactive, I believe, so I'm very happy with how they responded to that, and they've required that in order to get your CDL.
I was looking at your website and I saw a story of a young lady that had been recovered. And I don't know exactly who had been involved with her as far as helping in the recovery, but I noticed it said that she reconnected with a sister and had started, but then she basically fell back into that. She went back to the same person that was doing that. And so I guess they have to have a lot of, I mean, it's got to be a very traumatic and a very life-altering experience to be in that.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, some situations happen like that because when it comes to trafficking, trauma bonds are created between the trafficker and the victim. And so the victim may have had to rely on the trafficker for, all their needs, and maybe they were in a romantic or sexual relationship with their trafficker, and so they had this bond with them, and that's a very hard bond to break. So even though they're getting abused, there are times where they'll definitely go back to him. And it's very similar to domestic violence. I think the statistics out there is that they'll return to their trafficker at least 7 times, or it'll be it takes them about 7 times before they finally leave and cut that off.
And this may be slightly off the exact topic, but it touches on that. And this is something that I didn't realize until I was much older and learned this in church, that a sexual relationship with someone, God created sex for man and woman within marriage, and he created that to bond them together. And anytime that happens outside of marriage, that bonding still happens.
Yes.
And like you say, domestic violence and anything like it's just that's a real tight bond.
It is.
And is very difficult. So what kind of things are you able to do for the victims to help them overcome that?
Yeah. So, well, obviously, we're going to connect them to a therapist, someone that can really dive deep into their trauma with them. But usually before they get to that point where they're comfortable seeing a therapist, we'll work with them on managing their triggers and coping skills and helping them to understand, what healthy relationships look like versus unhealthy relationships, or unhealthy behaviors and healthy behaviors. And then we're also helping connect them to, getting a job or getting back in school, or if they need help with, taking their driver's test or getting their driver's license, or their GED. There's many different things that we can help them with. We also have specific curriculums, some are curriculums, some are like Bible studies that we can walk through with them if they're interested. Some of them talk about how to break free from those trauma bonds that they have, with their trafficker, and just how to overcome, the experience that they have been going through.
I'm sure we'll talk about several different parts of how people can help with this. But while you're on that subject, what organizations can churches, what other kind of organizations can make themselves available to you to be able to be a help with that? Yeah,
I mean, really, anybody. So, I mean, when it comes to volunteering with our clients, we don't take a lot of volunteers to help with the clients because there's confidentiality. There's so much involved. They have to go through background checks and extensive training. But some ways that we have utilized volunteers that have done that type of training and background check is we have helped them assist us with transportation. For example, if we have to go pick up a client that's, a few hours away, or take them to a safe house that's a few hours away, we could utilize a volunteer to ride with us. And, so that's, one way that we've kind of utilized some volunteers. We used to, like last year, we would do groups with some of our clients where we have people come in and teach like self-defense or teach art or yoga. So we've utilized volunteers in that way. But really, for volunteers, we utilize a lot of them for our events, our fundraisers, helping out at booths in the community, like helping us spread awareness. That's been probably the main way that we've utilized the most volunteers.
Okay. What kind of businesses or organizations would be applicable for you to come and give presentations to?
Oh, I mean, really anybody that thinks that they might come in contact with a victim of trafficking in their workplace, like we would love to come and talk to you about that, because we'll cater our presentation to you. So like if you're law enforcement, we're going to cater our presentation on what you need to know, like when you're out there on patrol. If you are a school educator, we're going to teach you what to recognize, if trafficking could be happening among your students.
Absolutely.
If you're a medical professional, what can we teach you, to recognize, how can we teach you to recognize human trafficking if they're coming in a clinic or the hospital. So we'll cater our presentation to you. But if you just want to learn about trafficking so you can protect your loved ones, yourself, your kids, we'll talk to you too. So.
Okay. To be clear about this, and I think people probably have, and this may be a myth you could dispel for us, a lot of people think that human trafficking happens when someone is captured,
right? Yeah.
Totally against their will and dragged off, and they have no say in what is happening. Don't really believe that's true a lot of the times.
Right. Yes. I mean, one of the statistics that I've heard before is that it's really less than 5% of victims of human trafficking were actually kidnapped into trafficking. They are lured into trafficking through false promises, false promise of a better life, a better job situation, false promise of a romantic relationship. They're tricked and lured into, or coerced and blackmailed more into trafficking versus kidnapping. Kidnapping very rarely happens. I think a lot of us picture that windowless white van that we were warned about growing up, but that's not how trafficking happens. Traffickers rely on a victim's gradual expansion of their boundaries and an increase in their trust, and so it's a slow and steady of how that trafficker lures and grooms them into trafficking versus a snatch and goes type situation.
So one thing to take from that is, as a young person, be very careful about who you
trust, who you're talking to, who you're in relationships with. You need to be mindful of what unhealthy relationships look like, so you can recognize forms of control or forms of coercion. And parents especially need to make sure they're monitoring their kids' online activity, so that they can also watch out for, predators and traffickers trying to target them.
Yeah. And for you kids out there that try to keep anything from your parents, that seems cool and seems like that's the only way to have a decent life and to do what you want to do, but believe us, that's not the way to be. Your parents are going to look out for you, and if they don't think you need to be around somebody, there's probably a really good reason for that. So I named some statistics at the beginning of this, a million in America, 50 million in the world, but that's just an at the moment number. So some will come into that and out of that. So over a 10-year period, you may have 5 times that many.
Right. Yeah, statistics are so hard, and sometimes overall human trafficking is underreported. So like whatever number. I mean,
it's basically a guess because.
Exactly, because people aren't reporting it. It's underreported. A lot of times victims don't identify that they're actually a victim of trafficking. Like they don't know what to call it, so they get identified as something else. And so I can only speak to our statistics and how many people we've served. Now, one good thing about Arkansas is that we've now developed the Arkansas Human Trafficking Advisory Council. There's a human trafficking unit within the state police. We now have a place that you can report human trafficking in Arkansas through a hotline and an email. And so that's great because now, like, we can collectively get statistics as a state.
Okay. What age group is prime for being trafficked?
So according to like the National Human Trafficking Hotline, they said about 18 years old is kind of like the average age. And we'll agree with that. We also say, anywhere from like 12 to 24, just that age range right there is just very, very vulnerable to trafficking.
I'm not surprised by the 12. I'm a little surprised by the 24.
Oh, yeah?
You would think that by that time.
I mean, I have served women that are in their 60s that have still been caught up in trafficking. It definitely, trafficking doesn't discriminate based off your age or your gender. I mean, it can be really surprising.
So we talked about this just a moment before the show. There's basically, I guess, two main types of trafficking. There's either sex trafficking or labor trafficking.
Right.
Which of those do you think is most common in America?
In America, I believe that sex trafficking is the most common. I was reading something the other day that mentioned labor trafficking but I'm like, I need to verify that. But globally, labor trafficking, there's more victims of labor trafficking worldwide, but victims of sex trafficking do bring in more money. It's more profitable. It's $1 billion industry. But I would say in America, and even in the people we have served, it's been more victims of sex trafficking. And I think a lot of that has to do with sex trafficking is, I don't want to use the word popular, but that's what I would say law enforcement and people are more focused on. Yeah. Yes. While labor trafficking is a little harder to prove in a sense because they're working in a job situation. So that can kind of fly under the radar a little easier.
Yeah, and I think seems like to me, and we kind of talked about this, that in America there are so many labor laws, and
right.
if you are running a legitimate business, for the most part, it's hard to do a lot of things. I mean, I don't understand how you employ an illegal alien or
I don't either. But yeah, absolutely right. There's a lot of there's child labor laws and other labor laws that can help prevent labor trafficking, where they don't have that in other countries. So that's why I think, it's probably more victims of sex trafficking, but we know it's still happening. It's just, kind of flying under the radar.
And you mentioned a while ago, a lot of these people may not even realize what's going on, may not realize that they are a slave.
Yes. So a lot of people don't recognize that they are a victim of trafficking, especially sex trafficking. They may think that they're in this relationship with their trafficker, and if they've grown up in a home where abuse was common and that's kind of what they experience, and then they may just think this is a normal type situation from the trafficker and the way the trafficker is treating them. But many times they don't recognize that they're a victim of trafficking. And a lot of times too, I think some victims may see like on movies or TV shows that their victims are chained up or held captive somewhere, and they're thinking, well, I'm not chained up, and I'm not held captive, so I might not be a victim of trafficking. But that's not true.
And one of the things that I saw was that the trafficker will hold deportation, over their head. And this was everything we're reading today is before the age that we're in now. But withhold passports, withhold any kind of anything like that, and also I think a lot of times people get into this, they owe $10, and they try to work it off, and it's now $1,000, and I don't know exactly how that works.
I know. Yeah, that's they call it debt bondage. So they get told, hey, come to America for a better life to make some money. maybe their way was paid over here, and then when they get over here, they're like, okay, well, you're going to have to pay this back, and then they attach interest to it. And it's really just a debt that they're never going to be able to pay off if they're getting paid any money at all, or they're getting paid just pennies on the dollar, and it's just constant. Yeah, they're never going to be able to pay it off. And as you said, they threaten them with deportation. They may threaten to harm them or harm their loved ones that are back home or somewhere else. And so that really keeps them kind of trapped in that situation.
And if they're from a third world country, a quarter a day is good wages,
right. Mm-hmm.
And so I know you mentioned a little bit about this to begin with, but how did you get started in this?
Yeah, so in 2008, I actually moved to Nashville, Tennessee from Jonesboro, and I saw a documentary at a local movie theater that was a documentary about human trafficking. And at the time, I didn't know anything about human trafficking, but it really piqued my interest, and so I went and learned all about human trafficking. It was mainly a documentary about human trafficking in like Cambodia and in India and Thailand. But after I left the movie theater, I just felt like God placed it on my heart that, hey, like I want you to do something about this issue and to work with this population. And so in Nashville, I got involved with some anti-trafficking organizations over there. But then I eventually moved back to Jonesboro and got involved. That was in 2011, got involved with an organization out of Little Rock. But there was nothing in our area, focused on trafficking. And so once that in 2018, when those human trafficking cases hit the news, me and some of these other women came together and we're like, okay, let's do something about this issue. And that's kind of how Hope Found got started.
Okay. Obviously, the goal is to keep people out of this. That's the ideal goal. What can we as individuals, churches, businesses do to help that happen, not happen?
So, I'm going to be frank for a little bit. So, human trafficking thrives off supply and demand. So, as long as there is we're just talking about sex trafficking, as long as there is a demand for sex, whether that's with a child or with a woman or man involved in prostitution, there's always going to be a supply, a trafficker trying to fill that supply. I believe a lot of it starts at a young age and starts in pornography. And I think churches could be really proactive if they talk about the dangers of pornography. And I think if people really, because pornography fuels the sex trafficking industry. And so I believe if people were open and honest and had those real conversations about how harmful it is to your brain and to yourself and to other people, I think that would help deter sex trafficking. We wouldn't have sex trafficking if we didn't have men that are buying, women and children. So I feel like that could help if people would start there. I also think, we need to, because of this sin in the world and how it is, we definitely need to talk to our children at a young age about, being online and talking to people and tricky people. What does that look like? What does it look like if a person's trying to take advantage of you? And making sure that you have strong relationships with your kids so that if something happens, they see something online, somebody tries to convince them to send a nude photo or send something, they have an honest relationship with you as a parent where they can come and say, hey, I messed up, I did this, I need some help, whatever it may be.
So the main thing starts really at home and is followed up by the church. And, I think we talk a lot about churches on this podcast. And, that's I've complained about failures of churches a lot and thereby trying to help. That's one I have not thought of. And so, that needs to, I guess, be on our radar a lot more than it is.
Yeah, definitely. I know it's uncomfortable. I think that's why people stray away from it, talking about pornography, but it affects everybody in the church or not in the church. And I'm like, we need to really be talking about this and how to protect our our kids and all that kind of stuff, and how to get free from pornography, because that is what is fueling the sex trafficking industry.
Well, I think we just don't see the results, in person, and so don't realize that they're there. And I'm sure that that education and getting people away from that would have a whole lot more results than just this, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that happen with that's doesn't quite make it to human trafficking.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
the results are almost the same.
For sure.
So
I think another thing too I'll add to this is, traffickers prey on vulnerable people, so they're looking for vulnerable populations to take advantage of. So think about in your community, who is vulnerable in my community? Well, we know all kids are vulnerable because of their age, but you have homeless people in your community. You have people that struggle with drug addictions. You have people that have housing insecurity and food insecurity. Like, get involved. You have children in foster care. Get involved in programs that serve those people and build relationships with them. That's a way to help end human trafficking, because you're helping to decrease the vulnerabilities that traffickers prey upon.
Right. And I don't know how parents are now, but when I was growing up, I think parents then just kind of let their kids be,
Right. Yeah.
and you can't do that anymore.
Nope. Yeah.
And back again years ago when I was a child, we were all innocent, and I don't think children remain innocent very long anymore. And if we as parents treat our children like they're innocent, years after the rest of the world doesn't treat them like they're innocent, and talk to them honestly and say, hey, these are the things that you need to watch for, and these are the things that you don't need to let go on, then we're probably doing them a disservice.
Absolutely. And you're exactly right. Just because the advancement of technology and stuff, our kids are getting exposed to things way sooner than we ever were.
Right.
The average age that a child is exposed to pornography is 8 years old. And it's even younger in some, obviously because that's the average age. But you want to be ahead of the game. You want to be able to talk to your kids about certain things before their friends talk to them about it, because their friends talk to them, it's probably going to be incorrect information more than likely, or not good information. So it's always good to be able to talk to your kids. And, obviously some of these conversations can be uncomfortable, but there's a lot of good material and books and things out there that can walk a parent through, what questions to ask and what how to have the conversations that are uncomfortable.
Well, and I totally get it. They're uncomfortable conversations, but we're the parent.
Yeah,
and they're
absolutely.
kids.
Yep.
I mean, how can it be that uncomfortable?
Right.
Especially if you start at early enough age.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the key. If you start early enough, it won't be as uncomfortable to have those conversations. And
that's not going to solve everyone's problems, but it may solve your child's problem.
Yeah.
And what else can be more important to you than that? Do you run into any myths or misinformation out there that's common that you'd like to dispel?
Yeah. So, we kind of already talked earlier about, trafficker or victims getting kidnapped into trafficking. Another one is, victims of trafficking are always chained up and held captive somewhere, and that's not necessarily true. Human trafficking is a crime that's hidden in plain sight. So you could be going to school with a victim of trafficking. Your waiter could be a victim of trafficking. Someone you work with could be a victim of trafficking. So it's kind of hidden in plain sight. Now, there are cases where some victims have been chained up and held captive. So that does happen, but it's very rare that is happening. Many times, especially minors, they're sleeping in their bed and they're going to school every day, but they're being sold for sex, either by a parent or somebody important in their life. Another myth is people think that traffickers are usually a stranger to the victim, when in reality, majority of victims are trafficked by somebody they know. So they're trafficked by that family member, somebody they've trusted in the community, or they've gotten in a relationship with, or their boss, somebody that they work with.
Okay. What are some of the signs that the average person can see and say, hey, there's something shady going on?
So, for the past 26 years, so human trafficking did not become a crime in the United States till 2000. So for the past 26 years, we've talked a lot about these are the red flags and, look out for these things. But in reality, it's going to be really hard to spot a victim of trafficking. If you just walk into a room, you're not going to be like, that's a victim of trafficking. It really boils down to kind of getting to know that person and getting to know their story, like interacting them with enough for you to start recognizing signs. And for example, like labor trafficking, you're not going to be able to go sit at a restaurant and or get your nails done and know if that person's being trafficked, because you have to ask them questions like, well, are you getting paid, and do you get breaks, and are you being forced to work here, or did you get your documents taken from you? Those aren't like normal things that you're going to be able to pick up on. But let's say that if you notice maybe a person seems to be maybe being controlled, maybe like the boss is walking around and watching over them, and they're kind of like scared and they're looking over their shoulder, that signals to you that something kind of seems off. Or if you're watching that person and they just seem, if they're providing a service, like I said, like they're waiting on your table or doing, your nails, like if they seem lethargic or they're not all there, maybe they look malnourished, that could be a red flag as well. But it boils down to, like, you're not going to know fully, if red flags start peeking up and you're like, okay, maybe this could be a victim of trafficking, we still suggest you report it. And then like for sex trafficking, same thing. That's even harder because you got to have, a person to kind of disclose that's going on. But let's say like you're in a neighborhood and there's a home or an apartment and there's multiple people coming in and out of the home, at all hours of the time, and maybe there's kids in there. That could be a sign that trafficking is going on in there. Could also be a sign of drug trafficking, but either are bad. Right. Especially if the person is a minor and they have like an older boyfriend that they're hanging out with and they seem controlling. Tattoos, there's certain tattoos that are associated with trafficking. That if they're not hidden, that could be a sign of trafficking. And those tattoos have to do usually with money, or like a crown, like the king or queen would wear on their head. That's one of them. Anything because they view them as somebody that's making them money, so it would be like a dollar sign or money bags. That can be, a sign of trafficking. Of course, kids that are running away a lot, skipping school, there's been a change in their behavior, their appearance, their interest. All those things can indicate that trafficking could be going on. It could also indicate, just something else is going on in their life.
That needs to be
addressed.
Yes.
Absolutely. So that's why we say, like, okay, you're not going to be able to just walk in somewhere and recognize a victim of trafficking, but get to know the people in your everyday circle that you interact with and that you see, and ask them questions and get to know your waiter or waitress or whoever's working on your nails or whatever, and get to know them, and hopefully if that is actually happening and they want to disclose that to you, then you can be a safe person that they can disclose
Right.
that to. But yeah, it's just it's really tricky sometimes.
Well, also if you develop a little bit of a relationship with that person, or even just have a conversation
Yeah.
with them, and there's someone there that's doing my nails, and they don't know anything about the town, or they
Right.
don't know where
Yep.
anything is. You know,
That's a big one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that means, okay, they may not have a lot of freedom if they lived here for a while, and they can't tell you your favorite restaurant or what they like to do for fun. That may mean that they're have no freedom and they're just working all the time.
Okay. What partner organizations are there around? Is there anybody else in this area doing anything similar?
So not really. We have partner organizations throughout the state that are doing the same kind of work that's focused just on human trafficking. So we have the Genesis Project and Into the Light and Hub of Hope and We Are Free. So we are all partnered together. And then you have your Family Crisis Center and like your DV shelters in programs across the state as well. And they also work with victims of trafficking too.
Okay.
Oh, and then your children's advocacy centers. They also encounter victims of trafficking.
Okay. And I guess that's kind of a network. And so
Yeah. So we kind of all try to, work together, as best as we can. If there's gaps, if let's say the Children's Advocacy Center, and CASA, we do a lot of work with CASA. So like if there's something that the Children's Advocacy Center or CASA can't do, but it's something we can do, then we can like fill in that gap and we just kind of partner together.
Okay. How do people, if we suspect someone's being trafficked, what do we do?
Yes. So I want to give you a phone number. I should know this by heart, but it's new. So like Arkansas now has a human trafficking hotline number, and that number is 501-618-8001. And you can also email reportht@arkansas.gov. And this is all on the state police website, so you could also go there and find all that information. And that's where I suggest everyone to go, because they're the ones that are going to investigate it. They're the ones that are going to collect all the information, and so that would be your best place to go. And they'll get in contact with, local police, and reach out to wherever the human trafficking, stuff is happening at.
Yeah, I remember on the CDL thing that they went over and over again, don't do anything yourself. Don't do anything yourself.
Right, yeah.
And that don't sit very well.
I know, that's
in some
really
situations.
Hard. You do want to, try to take it down as much information as you can, like if you got any names or if you license plate of a car, descriptions, anything that would be really helpful to help for law enforcement to be able to use to find a trafficker or a victim. Do that, but don't intervene. They say if you see something, say something. Obviously say something to law enforcement right away.
Okay. So how do people get a hold of you, and how can they help with your organization?
Yeah, so go to our website at hopefoundnea.org, and on the main page, there's some call to actions. That is a way that you can make a referral. So if there's somebody in need of our services, or if you want to refer someone to our services, there's a button that says make a referral, and you can just fill out this Google form and answer some questions, and then we'll take it from there. There's also a button that says donate now. So we obviously can't continue providing services without financial assistance. So we are looking for monthly donors to come along and partner with us and give monthly. We're looking for businesses to sponsor events. And those are ways that we help continue the sustainability of Hope Found. And there's also a button on there that talks about becoming a volunteer, and it shows kind of different areas of need that we have and that you could help serve in.
Okay, if you've seen this program and you've been at all any way touched by this, think about how you can help. And we've talked about some ways that parents can help with their children in particular. And we've talked about some ways that churches can help as far as just education within themselves. Really consider how you can do that and listen to what God has for you in that respect. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I forgot. There's another button on our website that says request a presentation. So churches and any individual that wants us to come and talk, we'll be more than happy to do so. And it's also in that form that you fill out, it'll say like if there's certain things that you want us to talk more about. So if you want us to talk more about online safety, I don't know, sexting or something, like we'll definitely like cater our presentation to what you want to do. But I encourage everybody, pray about how you can get involved with Hope Found, whether that is, just being a prayer partner and praying for us, or if giving financially, or getting businesses involved. We'll take all the stuff we can get, all the help we can get.
You mentioned sexting, and we've talked about pornography and a few other things tonight that we all know about and hear about, but we don't think about being related, to human trafficking.
Yes. It's almost like, it's like a stream of influence. It's like all these things influence and can easily lead to human trafficking. Not every situation is going to lead to it, but it can, and it definitely can lead to online sexual exploitation. And all those things are bad. Like all those things you want to be prepared for and prepared to teach our kids to, say no or resist or turn away and protect themselves. Because I'm a parent of 3. I can't be with my kids everywhere, but if I can try to equip and educate them on how to recognize if, somebody's trying to take advantage of them, or how to, if somebody sends them a nude photo, how to, delete it and tell me not to forward it on, stuff like that. I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, and I have one thing I want to go back to. We talked about, talking early with your kids.
Yes.
About stuff. You want to talk to them. You said this. You want to talk to them before their friends do.
Right.
And one reason you want to, if you will talk to them honestly about that, then they can process that and maybe even ask you questions before they have that interaction with someone else.
Yeah.
And that will be ingrained with them, and they'll know, for one, Mama talked to me about something like that. I'll ask her.
Right.
As opposed to I've never heard Mama say anything. I'm not going to say that.
Right.
So talk to your kids is very important.
Yes, definitely.
Anything else that you can think of that you'd like to add?
Man, I don't. With us being in Greene County, I do want to bring up that the majority of people on our caseload right now that we're serving, the majority of them are out of Greene County.
Really? And
yep. I don't really have there's not really a reason why, but we serve 11 counties in Northeast Arkansas, and I was looking at it the other day, and the majority of our the clients that we're serving right now, majority of them are out of Greene County.
That's crazy, and that surprises me.
Right, yeah.
And I bet it surprises everybody that sees this. And we need to just, take that and realize that we do not see the evil things that go on around us, and we need to be concerned about them.
Yep.
We see stuff on TV all the time, and all that's over there.
I know, yeah. Well, and that's another big myth, too. People are like, oh, well, this is happening in bigger cities or overseas. And, no, it's happening in small rural towns in Arkansas.
Well, that goes back to the statistics I had at the beginning. Apparently, there's about 100 people in this situation in Paragould.
Yes.
And the time you get, Greene County into that, you maybe get 200.
Yeah.
And that's insane to think about.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of our world today.
It is.
Well, Megan, we really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
And if we'll sure try to help you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone.